Chapter 4. Located in the middle of a picturesque medieval landscape, on the outskirts of the village of Kenwood, there was a cozy cabin, whose aged and time-worn beams gave it an unmatched charm.
Rooster, hang on a minute. You've gone from quirky to downright bonkers. Are you crazy, or did you get hit in the head, Mr. So-and-so? Lacknell whatchamacallit, as you say, was a futuristic city, wasn't it?
Did you forget about the parallel lives?
Well, yes, but one thing is parallel lives, and another very different thing is parallel time.
And what is time?
Well, I don't know, Mr. Know-It-All. So then keep telling me about that landscape, please. Oh, and don't think I've forgotten that you didn't tell me what Arlo saw in the last chapter there.
Patience, Mr. Minnesota Nice.
Hey, whatever.
Bordered by the lush embrace of a green forest, the rye-thatched roof was partially covered with soft moss, which blended seamlessly with the surrounding foliage. Its ivy-covered walls framed the unique wooden windows. A peaceful cobblestone path meandered to the sturdy rustic door. Behind the cabin, a splendid stream flowing with its crystal-clear waters, weaving a winding path through the quiet forest. That night Thomas had almost finished the strenuous walk through the forest, still feeling the pain in his left arm after having been treated by the feared recluse, whom the inhabitants branded as a witch, since banishing her from Kenwood due to her knowledge of herbalism and healing. Thomas couldn't get out of his head the accident that had turned his life upside down, having been run over by that thoroughbred horse that escaped from a nearby mansion belonging to the nobility.
Oh geez, first it was a flying car, then a bus, and now a horse. This hullabaloo is putting on a great performance. Sorry for interrupting, but I had to mention it.
Are you done yet?
Easy tiger, as Arlo the Slayer says. Please continue.
With great effort he reached his cabin, and promptly collapsed onto his makeshift bed of a pile of straw, covered with a dirty blanket. Due to his exhaustion, he completely forgot to take the regular nutritional potion, which the tyrannical regime had established long ago, and which everyone was accustomed to drinking before going to sleep in order to wake up the next day, with sufficient energy to do their required work in the fields. Quickly he fell deeply asleep, immersed in a hallucinatory dream in which he saw himself in an unusual city with surprising tall buildings, as well as unimaginable brightly colored machines flying through a blue sky that contained two large suns. Suddenly, some evil hooded beings wearing extravagant black armor, with metallic sparkles, began to chase him intently until, desperate, he snuck through one of the enormous windows of a dark palace. There he toured various sumptuous rooms decorated with opulent furniture. Despite the magnificence of these rooms, some black flames of torches illuminating a mysterious passage inside a huge pillar attracted his attention, and without thinking twice, he entered it. Little by little he made his way to a dark chamber enveloped in a penetrating stench, where he found a macabre cauldron covered with engravings that emanated an aura of antediluvian evil, and next to it, a disturbing black grimoire rested on an eerie stone pedestal. Attracted by the metallic substance coming from inside, Thomas reached towards the cauldron with his left hand, instantly noticing that the pain from the fracture has vanished. This encouraged him to continue reaching forward, and without further ado he felt the foul liquid, feeling an unpleasantly viscous texture on his fingertips. He immediately experienced an indescribable freshness, which enveloped his whole body. Unable to resist, he fully immersed his hand, and instantly, his body was illuminated with an enigmatic glow, which allowed him to feel in the depths of his being the spiritual pain of all the oppressed people, in the past, present, and future. With his heart beating rapidly, Thomas quickly withdrew his hand from the cauldron, and to his amazement it was coated in the metallic substance, like a glove which reflected his image with astonishing clarity. However, what would be his further surprise is that he discovered that the face that was revealed in the reflection was that of Arlo, a sweet young man who lived in a tiny neighboring village, and who sporadically sold vegetables in an old wooden cart, pulled by a couple of donkeys. One of his main clients was the owner of the Kenwood Tavern, near the palace where Thomas used to work as a waiter. At the same time, but in a distant universe, As soon as Arlo touched the cover of the book, he had a fleeting and unexpected vision of a young man of about his same age with a remarkably attractive appearance, with jet black hair that fell gracefully over his forehead, and whose gray eyes exuded a deep sadness that seemed to transcend his youth, and who galloped on a noble winged steed, with an exceptional coat of pink and green stripes. At the moment he felt slightly confused, but flooded by a singular conviction that welled up from his heart, the certainty that very soon he was going to meet that fascinating boy, who would give his life an unexpected turn. Then he let out a deep sigh, and with that sigh the vision vanished into thin air. Arlo hesitated for a few moments, however, upon seeing the bodies of his dungeon companions on the ground, he once again concentrated on inspecting that grimoire. Page after page he felt his shocked spirit being squeezed hard, until unable to help himself he exclaimed, "This is impossible. Now I remember these ancient teachings being revealed to me through my constant lucid dreams."
Meow, but what are you saying, son of Daru Moxley? The two of them met somewhere in the universe. So worry, I won't interrupt you again. Don't cha know, just keep going.
Thomas woke up suddenly, breathing heavily. The echoes of that peculiar dream still resonated in his mind, and as he stood up from his usual pile of straw he realized that the pain in his left arm had completely disappeared. Frightened, he ran to the stream behind his cabin to splash cold water on his face. Notwithstanding, he almost lost his mind when he watched his hands pass through the water without getting wet. Terror and confusion overwhelmed him as he frantically went back inside his cabin where, to his amazement, he saw his physical body sleeping peacefully. In a panic, he tried to scream but he couldn't make a sound. Out of his mind he perceived how his ethereal body began to levitate and glide uncontrollably, passing through the rustic wooden door once again. Regardless of his familiarity with the landscape on the outskirts of what had been his home from the moment of his birth, everything looked so different, vibrating with a disturbing subatomic force that drew him irresistibly toward the palace of the evil family of tyrants who had ruled for a long time. Thomas fought vehemently, but all efforts were in vain as he could not resist that unknown magnetic pull. As he was about to reach his destination, the sharp flash of a vision shook him to the core. In just a few days he would speak to Arlo for the first time. Despite having exchanged fleeting glances and the occasional shy smile, they had never had the opportunity to properly meet. All of this would happen since wandering aimlessly, after having been expelled from the town from his boss Mr. Makodan, accusing him of witchcraft, based on rumors that villagers had seen him walking into the forest the night following his accident, and after returning a day later with his arm covered in bandages, making evident his visit to the witch who, according to rumors, lived in the depths of that same forest. That series of events would lead him to be interrogated, tortured and forced to confess his non-existent dark practices. At the end of that distressing vision, and finding himself right in front of the palace, guided by a sudden impulse, Thomas began to repeat a phrase that fortuitously echoed in his mind. "Amasmi Daraka Mariki." As he did so, a cascade of sensations invaded him, and he was able to feel, firsthand, the very moment of his conception inside his mother's womb, the formation and development of his physical body, the moment of his birth, and other experiences that had occurred previously, completely forgotten until that time. Letting himself be carried away by these emotions, he shouted the phrase with a voice so loud that when he opened his eyes he found himself back on his straw bed. Without hesitation and motivated by the intense vision, he hurriedly gathered some of his belongings into a gnawed and worn weasel skin bag that his mother had made for him, and left the cabin that he had inherited from his parents, who had died a year earlier, on the day he turned 17. Thomas walked for hours through the woods, his left arm still aching under the rudimentary bandages. As darkness descended, the forest's gigantic trees transformed into ominous silhouettes, their branches resembling menacing skeletal fingers reaching toward the sky. The air was thick with the pungent smell of earth and wet leaves, and both the echoes of owls hooting and the occasional whisper of invisible creatures moving through the undergrowth created a chilling atmosphere. In the middle of the bizarre night, a torrential storm broke over the forest, forcing Thomas to seek some shelter. Exhausted, hungry and hopeless, he let his feet guide him blindly, not knowing where to go, while remembering the legends he had heard since he was a child, which spoke of diabolical creatures thirsty for human blood, that lived in the depths of the forest, waiting for any unsuspecting man who dared to explore it. At dawn he caught sight of a small village, and, feeling slightly relieved, He walked without stopping until exhaustion brought him to collapse in the middle of the majestic embrace of an imposing oak tree, near a squalid cabin. The enormous roots of the tree seemed to wrap around him like silent sentinels, gently cradling him as he fell asleep, with his head resting on the weasel skin sack and escaping momentarily from the martyrdom that tormented him. The soft light of the evening on his face woke him, and after yawning loudly, he faced a new tragedy. His sack with his only remaining possessions, as well as his worn-out shoes, were gone. Feeling helpless in the face of such cruel injustice, Thomas sat silently upon one of the strong roots of that oak, while a sullen brown-haired guard wearing a poncho-style coat decorated with the coat of arms of the local lord he served, gave him a threatening look and using insults, forced him to leave, considering him a threat. Because the guards faced the constant threat of ambush or surprise attack, they had to always remain alert and prepared. Whether defending a castle against a siege, or patrolling the streets of a bustling village, these bloodthirsty guards, known throughout the empire as the Tagslanians, stood as symbols of strength and stability in a frighteningly uncertain world. The cobblestone road that took him away from the village cruelly punished his sore feet. The villagers who watched him with contemptuous attention murmured about the inopportune presence of that stranger, but Thomas ignored such mumblings he overheard. As night fell, Thomas sought refuge in a nearby cave, on the outskirts of the village, hoping to avoid harassment by the Tagslanians. Once again the rain fell relentlessly, but that no longer bothered him since the need for rest, even if only for a few hours, was imperative. Suddenly a strange light at the entrance to the cave surprised him, and the sound of footsteps put him on alert, fearing being harassed by those beasts again, the Tagslanians. Unexpectedly out of the shadows he recognized a red-haired young man approaching, holding a torch to illuminate his path. It was Arlo himself who, guided by an unusual impulse and following the gossip of the villagers, had gone out in search of that unfortunate vagabond, who undoubtedly needed help. The strong flame fed by animal fat swung at the tip of the torch, casting frightening shadows while the crackling of the burning wood, and the smell of smoke, rapidly filled the air. Embarrassed by his tattered appearance and because on multiple occasions, he had dreamed of that first meeting with Arlo, Thomas tried to back away from the light, but as he did so, he tripped over some stones underfoot. That caused him to fall on his back, and hitting the back of his head, momentarily losing consciousness. Upon coming to, Thomas found himself in an unfamiliar room, dressed in clean clothes and with his body exhaling a sweet perfume of healing herbs. At his side was Arlo, who smiled kindly at him, offering him a steaming bowl of stew his father had recently prepared. That tempting aroma was like a balm for his tired body. Without hesitation Thomas accepted the generous gesture and began to eat, greedily feeling that this bowl of stew was a blessing to his troubled soul. Arlo began to share the details of how he had found him, assuring him that coincidences did not exist, and how when he saw him lose consciousness in that grim cave he felt he had to bring him home to take care of him. The next day, as soon as he had regained the strength to stand up, Thomas greeted and thanked Arlo's parents for their hospitality. They hugged him tenderly, inviting him to stay with them as long as he wanted. Before breakfast Arlo extended an invitation to accompany him to his favorite place, in a quiet meadow bathed in the soft morning sunlight. In a small woolen sack they carried some apples, berries, nuts and a skin full of herbal tea for the trek. That place was truly magical. The sun just rising above the horizon cast a golden glow over the landscape, illuminating every blade of grass with a warm, vibrant glow. Wild flowers in a range of colors, from the delicate blue of bluebells to the deep red of poppies, swayed lightly in the morning breeze, which carried a fresh scent with it. The early morning dew still beaded leaves and petals, reflecting the light in small sparkles like tiny diamonds scattered on the ground. The little birds were beginning to wake up, filling the air with their happy and melodious song, adding a natural soundtrack to this idyllic scene. A stream slid lazily through the grass, whispering ancient songs that produced an unparalleled feeling of peace and serenity. As they enjoyed the sweet and juicy red apples, they began to remember the times they had seen each other at the tavern when Arlo came to make some deliveries. Little by little they realized the great mutual attraction they felt for each other. It was as if an inexplicable spiritual communion united them, and for a brief moment, they looked at each other in silence, letting themselves be carried away by the warm spark that exploded strongly in their hearts. That unknown sensation transcended time and space, because it was as if they had met in another life. Thomas felt how all the pain he had experienced gradually faded away. Then Arlo, filling up with courage and driven by an indescribable emotion that took his breath away, asked him if he could kiss him on the cheek.
Holy smokes, Arlo wants to give Thomas a kiss.
Can I continue with the story?
Oopsie daisy, now I'm causing the hullabaloo.
Blushing, Thomas nodded silently, and as he felt Arlo's warm lips against him, he knew he would never leave Arlo's side again. An innocent love had just blossomed between them, inviting them to travel an infinite path, forever holding hands. In that moment of absolute serenity they embraced each other affectionately, united by an unbreakable bond of love and loyalty, knowing that what they felt was a gift to be appreciated for all eternity. Thank you for joining us for this part of an exciting adventure with Thomas. If you liked the story and video, please click the subscribe button, give me a like, and share it with all your friends. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know about the next chapter of Wake Up Thomas, a story of resilience and redemption. All the best until then.